Well, the BBC might have their own issues with presenters, but we've got no such problem here today on the Lost in Possession podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all things top four race. Roll that intro. Hello and welcome back to the Lost in Possession podcast. As I said, today is all about the top four race in the Premier League. But before we get started, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn the bell notification on. It's free and it takes about 2 seconds of your time. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. So the top four initially, many people thought was absolutely nailed on. It was very clear what the Premier League top four was going to look like. However, with recent events, with recent results, it's now potentially a battle that up to 9 teams, and we'll debate this, up to 9 teams could be involved in. So let's get straight into it. Guys, obviously top four, both your teams, probably fair to assume that they're going to be the obvious. So we'll get the easy bit out of the way. Are you both convinced that Arsenal and Man City will be in the top four? Let's get that out of the way early. Jamie?
Tough one. Yeah, I think we're fairly safe. I think it's going to be 1-2, hopefully in City's favour. But yeah,
17 points above the top four, so you should be fine. And Reece, in your case, even more.
Yeah,
confident.
Yeah, it should be. It should be done. You know, by the looks of it, nobody wants the fourth place at the moment. So, barring an absolute catastrophe, you know, I think Arsenal and City can be dining on the Champions League table next year.
Absolutely.
I do reckon probably if Arsenal lose every game to the end of the season, they will get that fourth spot still.
Yeah,
that's on 66 points. That's what I'd imagine.
Well, as we know, as Reece, you just hinted at, we every year the top four races, who wants it the least almost, constant drop in points, constant bottling every week. But we'll get into that. So let's safely assume that Arsenal and Man City are done in the top four. So our debate today is going to be more about those third and fourth slots. As it stands right now, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur occupy third and fourth, but there's a whole range of teams that will be chomping at the bit to try and get in those places. Let's talk Man United. And Jamie, we'll start in Manchester with you. Obviously, 3 weeks ago, they're in the title race potentially, in the form of their lives. Since then, they've lost 7-0. They've struggled at home to Southampton, and they're 16 points off Arsenal. So now they've got to be looking down below them rather than above them. Do you think they've still got a chance in this top four, or are they going to slip even deeper down?
Yeah. So the title race for them is done. I think United fans can admit that, and I don't think they properly thought they were in one. But the 7-0 to Liverpool just cemented that. You can't be losing like that and then turning around and winning the league. I just don't think it would happen. But in top four terms, they're obviously 3 points ahead of Spurs in fourth with a game in hand. I think they're in form enough to easily get over the line. I think it'll be quite comfortable. And to be honest, Ten Hag's first season, trophy, top four, still got Europa. And if they go quite far in that, you can still say it's quite a successful season considering it's his first. But I don't see United dropping enough points to get out of it. And I don't see the other teams going on such a run that puts them under that much pressure. So, yes, they will look below rather than above, but I don't think they're going to have anything to worry about.
Reece, do you feel the same on that?
Yeah, pretty much. I think United have been doing it all season, go on an amazing run, put in a couple of poor performances, go on an amazing run. I think they have enough quality to keep that consistent, as strange as that sounds. And I think that it's they're probably just that little bit stronger to get over the line. So I think they'll be fine.
Casemiro out for 4 games though. Got to chuck that. That's a spanner in the works. We've all, waxed lyrical about how influential he's been, not just as a CDM, but he has been contributing goals as well. Losing him for 4 games, maybe.
Yeah, it's stupid. I mean, it's a second red card of the season. Was supposed to be an experienced pro in their team. It doesn't exactly set a good example, but their fixture list isn't the worst. They've got Newcastle away, which could really confirm if they're going to get it or not. Brentford at home, Everton at home. I think they'll be fine.
All right. Well, I'll slightly disagree, and obviously we'll get into it with the other teams. But I do think we've seen with these big teams that are maybe up and down, that you can have a run or a turn of form, whether it's positive or negative. There's been so many top teams this season. As I said, United, Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, so-called big teams who many might have had nailed on for the top four, have had some horrible, horrible runs of form. And you look at United; they've been on this crazy, crazy wave of momentum, almost unbelievable. And now suddenly we've seen, getting beat. We've got to go back to this. Getting beat 7-0 to any team under any circumstance, even for the bottom teams in the league, is a shock to the system. And the one thing you need after an embarrassing defeat to rivals is a win. And they've not got it. One of their leaders has gone and got sent off. I do think in the short term, at least, this could be a little dip for United now. But it could go the other way, where they lose a bit of momentum, the self-confidence starts to go. So I do think they're still in the top four race now. And I don't think it's as nailed on potential as you guys have them down for.
The reason why I disagree, though, is they did get that win. That in the midweek, the European game against Real Betis was that win. That was we need the next game just to come and win. It didn't matter how they performed. They actually performed quite well against Betis. And to be fair, I didn't watch all of that game, but some of it, what I saw, United were dominating, and 4-1 was a fair result. Might have even been more. So really, they got over it. Look, if you went off today's performance, if that midweek game didn't happen, then I'd agree. They're not showing it. But you've also got to think, red card, not losing is not the end of the world. Casemiro out for 4 games is big, but I think they're still overall all round good enough just to get through. And it's a bit different to what the title race is. The title race is a draw at the moment is a big 2 points dropped. Whereas the top 4 race, all of them teams will lose a couple of games. You saw this weekend what I think only Newcastle and Spurs won, but the rest dropped points. That will happen pretty much every week. So that's why I don't think it's as bad as what it would be for if City or Arsenal lost or drew. Whereas you can get away with it and still get in the top 4.
No, I think that's fair. Well, let's move on to Spurs. Now, again, a weird week for Spurs because on the one hand, they've sort of, gone out with a whimper in the Champions League, failed to have a shot on target in the first half at home to Milan, who, although AC Milan are current league champions, they've been underwhelming this season. We have to say that. So for Spurs not to only not win, but to go out in such a poor fashion, not showing any fight, was a very, very tough time for them. Obviously, they've bounced back. You can call it a bounce back. No disrespect to Forest, their away record is extremely bad. They have bounced back with a win. How do you guys stand on Spurs? Because from my side, I feel like I've been very consistent about my thoughts on Spurs all season, about how they've been playing, and yet they're here and they're currently 4th. And despite all the negative, they are still very much in the top 4 race. How do you guys feel about Spurs at the minute?
Oh yeah,
So it's a weird one with
Go on,
Spurs. Yeah, sorry. It's a weird one with Spurs because if you take the games in hand situation in, they'll actually be 6th. Let's say the other teams won all their game in hand. I don't know who they've got and all that. They'd actually be 6th. They'd be below Newcastle and Brighton. Brighton would have a better goal difference. So it could be a little bit more flattering to say they're 4th at the moment, but points on the board matter at this stage. Like games in hand you can lose. Like Brighton played Leeds. Teams who are getting that top 4 would you expect to go and beat them. Whereas this might be where they are. But Spurs, yes, they've not been performing well. And if it weren't for Kane having pretty much a very, very good season, which I think, once again, I think I said it last time on the FPL one, was he'd be getting a bit more media attention about his season if it weren't for Haaland and his goal scoring record. Kane's having a great season, and that is what's keeping him in it. The rest of the team are just having mid performances, really. And then you've got your £60 million signing, scoring offside goals, taking his top off and shushing the manager. There's problems at Spurs. Spurs don't like Conte. It looks like, I think he's going to go in the summer, and it's just it's going to come to like a bad end. So I do feel Spurs need to sort of worry, even though they are currently with the points on the board. But if Kane keeps scoring goals, it's hard that they won't just wilter away from the top 4 race. So I think they would be amongst it. But some things have got to come into form. Son's got to get back into form because he's not been in it all season. And then looking at the defence, you don't need stupid red cards like Romero can give you. That just doesn't help. And he's done it time and time again. He got sent off against City when they're 1-0 up. Like, he was lucky it was the 89th minute or whatever it was. If that's earlier on in the game, that can really cost you. And Spurs, to be fair, in the games they've got loads of people. They've got all of them, all the ones we're probably going to talk about. They've got Newcastle, United, Liverpool, Brighton, all to play. Like, that's the games that get you top 4 or not. It's actually great for the top 4 race because there's going to be so many games that just matter. So all these, what they call in relegation, 6-pointers, they're going to be 6-pointers for the top 4. So Spurs need to sort of, because this is all they've got now. They're, once again, no trophies. They need top 4. That's all they can go for. And I'd be surprised, though, if their form actually changes, as in the way they're playing. Because you can't go 27 games in and being poor through majority. So I don't really see it changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jamie's right. They seem to have the better of the fixtures coming up, personally. Southampton away, Everton away, Brighton home, Bournemouth home, Newcastle away. I personally think Tottenham are more than capable of getting maximum points out of all those. I'd probably argue that the banana skin there is Everton. But realistically, I think they should beat Brighton. You know, I said I've never really believed in this Brighton bubble. I think it will burst. Maybe not this year, but that's another story. Then they meet Man United on the 27th of April, which is where they need to have the points banked because that's when it becomes a real crucial one for them. Will they or won't they? You know, they beat Nottingham Forest, but Nottingham Forest away record, as you said, is very poor. But they looked all right. They're the sort of team they're capable of it. They just need to be consistent with it because at the moment they're winning 1 or 2 and then putting in such a poor performance like we saw against Milan in the week. Who Milan are a very poor side. Let's be honest, champions or not. But yeah, it's a strange one for them. But with their fixtures, they should look at it and go, let's give this a go here because we're in the best position to do it. But as we've seen already this season, that doesn't seem to really matter to them. They seem to throw it away stupidly.
Yeah, I slightly disagree, to be honest, and I'll be consistent with my sort of thoughts on Spurs all season. They're not. Again, you've got to give them a bit of credit because despite playing pretty bad for probably 80% of games, defensive, negative, despite having one of the world's best strikers, they are grinding out and they have been grinding out points, little wins here and there in games, where they've got a lower XG than their opposition, games where they've not had, they had less possession and they're nicking a 1-0 or so in some respects, you've got to give them credit for that. But, your point around Brighton, Reece, I think for Spurs, the bubble of playing bad and getting points for me has to dip at some point. And I mean, on Spurs, I guess I've probably got an unpopular opinion, but Crouch sort of said something similar out of frustration in the week when they went out of Champions League. But all this talk of top four, what's the point? because if they're going to do that and they're going to play like that in the Champions League against Milan at home, what's the end game? Because does any Spurs fan honestly believe they're going to win the Champions League? I don't know.
No.
Maybe guys, reach out, comment. But for me, if I was Spurs and I was a Spurs fan, I'd be looking actually going. It's going to sound negative, but if we were in the Europa, I'd actually fancy us. Like if Spurs win Europa League, you'd go right. They've actually got a chance of winning that. And that in the long
Didn't
run.
they have that? Didn't they have that a few seasons ago? Was it last season?
To be fair, they had
And
the
then they go
Conference League.
that. But I think there's just more problems around it. But getting Champions League means they should be able to sign the better caliber of players, the ones that should complement Kane. But that's down to the board, really.
Do you know what this screams of? This screams of how Arsenal were when they moved to the Emirates. That 2006 to around, I'd say you'd have to say maybe 2017, Wenger's last year, before maybe brought in the odd big name, but it's the exact replica of that. And if the Spurs board can't see that, it's very naive. Because look what happened to Arsenal. They settled for fourth every year, and yet your ambitions would want to be higher with what you've done. And it was just poor. You get cutting back savings, going for a certain approach. It just doesn't work. And eventually your bubble bursts in that way, and Spurs could end up falling further down without realizing it. It screams exactly what we all saw at Arsenal. So they need to be careful.
Yeah, agreed. And as I said, I do see a scenario, even all those teams, Jamie, you mentioned, Brighton, Newcastle. At the minute, the way they're playing, it's hard for me to be confident in Spurs winning any game of football. So I do personally think they're going to be the ones to watch because they have got a nice buffer at the minute of points. But I can see that buffer getting quickly eroded during those games against your Brightons, against your Newcastles. Let's talk Newcastle. On that note, we'll move swiftly on. So the next two teams, for people who don't have the league in front of them, you've got Spurs in fourth and 48 points. Then we go Newcastle in fifth, 44 points, 2 games in hand on Spurs. We've then got Liverpool in sixth with 42. And then we've got Brighton in seventh place with 39. Again, a nice buffer of games in hand. Where do you guys stand on Newcastle, Liverpool, and Brighton?
I'll take this one. Newcastle are under the least pressure. I don't think they'll be too disappointed if they don't get fourth. They already set their ambitions out that top 7 was good enough for them. And that's absolutely fine. If you offer them top 7 and a cup final, they're going to take that. Absolutely. I think the only thing is I think they'll be disappointed with the amount of draws. Otherwise, they'd have had that buffer. But I think that they're not going to be too disappointed if they end up 7th, to be perfectly honest with you. Liverpool, I think they're the team with the hardest set of fixtures. In the league, they got City away, Chelsea away, Arsenal home, Leeds away. The strange thing is Liverpool are probably the team capable of winning all those games. That's a Liverpool thing for them to do. But as we saw at Bournemouth, they then let themselves down. So they could win all 3 of them and then go to lose Leeds away. But I think Liverpool have got the most credentials to get it. They're in the best position to get it. And Brighton, I don't think they will. I think Brighton will settle for 7th if they get it. Simple as that.
And with Liverpool, I mean, they've obviously won. I feel like any team capable of beating Man United in their form 7-0, you have to give a chance. You have to give a chance. Because they are, as you said, Reece, in the last few seasons, they've been there and done that, where they just run, go on a run and win 15 games in a row or something crazy. So I definitely sort of chuck my hat in the ring and say, look, Liverpool out of that 3 certainly look the most likely candidates to nick a spot from United or Spurs.
It's probably more important for them to get it. If you look at what their transfer plans are, probably in the summer. I don't think players will turn away if they finish 5th, but considerable impact on them. They probably need it more out of the lot. But that's not a criticism, that's just is what it is. But I think they've got the potential to get it more than the other teams at this moment in time, bar one other team that we'll touch upon in a minute.
Sort of with the Liverpool factor is that obviously I do agree that they've shown that they can do it in the past. And I do think it's something that is said a lot about City as well. And I think it's a bit disrespect to what Arsenal were in the title race. They can go on this run to win 15 games, but both City and Liverpool aren't them same teams. So that's where I feel like that's the problem. Everyone says Liverpool can do it, and they've shown in the past they can do it. It's true, but Liverpool aren't that same team. So I don't see them going and winning what we got. How many games we got left? 12 games left. I don't see them winning 10 out of them 12. I see them winning 7, drawing 3, something like that instead. And that's what I think is going to be the same with all these teams. That's the problem I have with them. They're very hit and miss. Can't go 7-0 to United, then playing the team that you beat 9-0 earlier on in the season, then going to lose 1-0. And fair play to Bournemouth, they're fighting for their lives. So there are difficult games. This is why we try and say the Premier League doesn't have any easy games. But that's the problem they've got. They're so inconsistent. You don't know what Liverpool team's going to turn up because they beat City early on in the season. But then they just drop silly points, and it seems to be they can get up for certain games, but not consistently, not for everyone. I watched the Newcastle game earlier against Wolves. Thought Newcastle were fairly good. Like they've got to get out. They had to trust out a bit of a slump they were in, and I think just winning was important. And the fact that it's taken more than one goal to do it, I think, is good for their confidence because they were lacking goals. Newcastle will be happy with 5th, 6th, 7th. I think European football would be ideal for them. They'd have taken that at the start of the season. Newcastle sort of, I just think their defence just needs to get back on it. If they shore up their defence again, they'll comfortably get European football, but top 4 takes them winning games where they're sometimes just not capable. Because I think they could have put Wolves to bed a bit earlier on and gone 2-0 up, for example. But they let Wolves back in and then got the goal. But then if you look towards Brighton, who I sort of mentioned before, if you take their game in hand, they've got 3 games in hand over Spurs. Win them all. They're ahead of Spurs on goal difference. Brighton are in sort of, I think, in dreamland for what they'd actually expect. So the fact that we can mention them in top 4 races, huge credit, especially losing Potter as well. People thought, Potter's gone. They might fall apart a bit. They've shown they're very good still. And I think they'll just fall short of this list who we're talking about. Sort of, you're talking about Spurs, Newcastle, Liverpool. I think they finished bottom of this list, but it's still a great season for them, and they can certainly sort of. It's hard to build on it with the amount of money that gets spent from all these other clubs, but if they're still battling away with them, you can't really argue and ask for much more as a Brighton fan.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Brighton, either way, they're winning to even be in this conversation. It's very hard to make, although you're right about the games in hand, I don't see them as a team who are going to go win 3-4 in a row. They might be
3
going
games
beaten
in hand
3-4.
is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah,
sort of to say you're going to win them all is probably unlikely.
Yeah, but again, you never know. Could sneak into 6, 7, get a European football, which would be unreal. Newcastle, I agree as well. To be honest with what you said, like today was just about getting that win against Wolves, just getting over the line, getting the 3 points under your belt, and trying to build again. And again, two games in hand on Spurs. If they win them, they're above them. So the games in hand is going to be quite an interesting one to kind of, because you never really know where teams are at. And then you go, they got 3 games in hand, but then they, as we've seen with the top 4 race, they'll go and loot. Teams can go and not win for 3 games. So I think that's very interesting. But again, as I said before, for me, out of Newcastle, Liverpool, Brighton, I'd still give Liverpool, despite the slight gap, I'd still give Liverpool the best sort of odds of getting there. Now
One
let's
thing,
look.
sorry, one
Sorry, go on.
thing just more about Brighton is out of all these teams that we mentioned, they've also got nothing else to play for. Brighton have got the FA Cup.
Very true, actually.
They're playing. They've got Grimsby, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a very winnable game at home. Then they're at Wembley. So fantastic season for them. But as we're talking just the top four race, I think that puts them. That means they've got something else distracting them from just the Premier League games, where the other clubs are not in Europe anymore. Well, Liverpool are 5-2 down. Looks unlikely. Liverpool can do it, but they'd normally want to be at home for that game to turn something around. So they have nothing left. So Brighton's the only one with something distracting them that could impede them a bit further.
Well, let's move on now. So we've sort of discussed the top, 4 to 7. Now there is 4 other teams left who we can debate. Firstly, their chances. Second, are they even in the top 4 race? So we'll go down the table. So we've got Fulham, who are in 8th place. So they're on 39 points, which is the same as Brighton. However, out of all these teams, Fulham have played the most games. So Fulham, 27 games played, whereas Brighton have 24 played. So Brighton, obviously in 7th, Fulham in 8th, 39. Brentford in 9th on 38 points, with 2 games in hand on Fulham. This is sounding a bit complicated, but this is the top 4 race all over. And then, of course, the biggest team of the lot, Chelsea, are still in 10th position. And you've also got Villa in 11th. So Fulham, Brentford, Chelsea, Villa, where do you guys stand on them? Can these teams somehow sneak back into the top 4 race against the odds?
I can do this. This be quite quick. Absolutely not. The only team that are capable of getting in the Champions League next season is Chelsea, and that's by winning the Champions League.
Don't rule it off. Don't rule it off.
What? So you're what? 11 points behind Spurs. Turns into 8 if you win your game in hand. It's just too much. You need to go on a run of winning pretty much all your games, and then you need them to mess up a bit too much. I think you're out of it, to be honest. Fulham, obviously, like you say, they're matching points already, matching games. Sorry, Fulham will, I think, slightly wilter away, but what a season they've had. I think I had them staying up by one place. Like I had them that low down. I think a lot of people did. To be where they are, absolutely comfortable, not in the relegation battle. Brilliant season for them. Brentford, once again, they've been very exciting. They're slowly sort of like withering down a bit, but once again, they've had a great season to be mid-table, comfortably mid-table. Big wins against City, at City, the 4-0 to United, the sort of drawing against Arsenal away, which most teams are taking an L every time they go to Emirates. They've had a great season as well, but they're not getting in. They're not doing the top 4. And Aston Villa, they're way too inconsistent. They just need. I think they're just they're happy to wait for the summer and then build on that. But Chelsea have the most chance out of them teams, but I think it's way too late to start hitting your form, and that form then will have to be perfect. And I don't see that happening.
Reece, what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Villa, they won't get top 4 under Unai Emery. It's as simple as that. Next season, maybe top 7, but not top 4. Fulham are on the beach. To be perfectly honest with you, they've achieved more than they thought they were going to. I think they're done. Brentford, I think, will try and go for 7th. I think they will. They probably might fall short, but again, I think they'll be on the beach in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, the one I mentioned earlier, who I said I was going to touch upon, was Chelsea. I do think it will take a lot of luck to go in your favour. But I said last week, I think you might have just clicked at the right time, which is a good thing, because if everyone else is being inconsistent, you suddenly turned consistent. that's probably a good thing. Your fixtures can be hit and miss. You got Everton, Villa at home, Liverpool at home, Wolves away, Brighton at home. But there's home fixtures in there that should all be winnable. Or ambitious to be winnable. Wolves, should go for them. Man United is probably the big one there on the 22nd of April. That's probably the toughest. But you're going to have to rely on everyone else to slip up, and that means having, say, Liverpool to slip up along the way quite a bit. You can get there, but I think you could at least sneak into the top 6, which I think you would take, bearing in mind how the season has gone.
Yeah, I think fair points from you both. I agree definitely on Fulham as a starting point. I think incredible season. The fact they're 12 points above 12th place is absolutely insane. Like, they're so comfortable, it's actually a joke. I think I did actually. We'll save the episode of revisiting our predictions for the end of the season. But I did back Fulham to do well, but definitely definitely never 8th position. So they have done some serious work there. Credit to Marco Silva as well. Brentford again. It's just a weird one because I'm pretty sure a lot of people had Brentford down for relegation, and yet here they are, 9th position, great form. Things go. Obviously, they've got the Tony ban coming up in probably April, but apart from that, they're looking good. And again, even if they do dip down into 10th, 11th, whatever, they are having a great season. And again, the fact they're 11 points clear of 12th is just crazy. But Reece, you're probably right. We love the term on the beach. Obviously, towards the end of the season, I do think in those teams, have they got the minerals to sustain a European race? Probably not at this stage.
Where I give Brentford their dues, though, is I know I said on the beach, but I think that is a bit harsh. They are a very professional bunch. If you look at how they went to Everton last year, there was no pressure on them. Everton needed everything to get a win, and Brentford went and beat them.
Yeah,
quite comfortably. They're a team. I think they have a better mentality than the likes of Villa and the likes of Fulham, etc. So I don't think they can be ruled out. But
yeah, and I guess moving down to the last two, I'll touch on Villa first. Again, I just think Villa have had such a strange season. Obviously, the change in manager, the horrible form, the sort of turnaround under Emery. Again, I think you're right. They'll just be looking for the summer, get this season done, get it out of the way. And as I said, 8 points clear of 12th. Again, they're in a comfortable position. They can probably put their feet up to some degree. I know, as we said, maybe professionals don't do that. But I think they're in a good place to rebuild in the summer. We've seen they can go into the transfer market with a budget. So I think for them, fans will be chilling and fairly comfortable. To touch on Chelsea, I agree. I mean, again, the swings and roundabouts of this season, emotionally alone, have been absolutely wild. And if you ask me after the Spurs game, I think Chelsea fans probably hit rock bottom in that moment. I think 95% of the fan base obviously wanted Potter out. And 3 games later, the whole narrative's changed. We said on the podcast, football changes so quickly. Narratives change overnight like that with a few wins, and suddenly we're looking like a good team again. So I'll be optimistic. I think, well, this weekend, I said on the group earlier jokingly, Brentford drop points, Fulham drop points, Brighton drop points, Liverpool drop points, and they're all the teams around us. So although to get even in the European conversation, we're going to have all these teams drop points. It's absolutely possible because it's just happened this weekend that 3 or 4 teams in that race can drop points. So if you're capable, as I said, maybe we will, maybe we won't. We've got the quality, we've got the squad to go and beat Everton, Villa, United, even Liverpool at home. So if we can somehow find a United level run, which again, unlikely, but you never know, I think we might make a bit of a late rally. But you're probably right, Jamie. Our better chance of getting Champions League is winning it. We'll save our Champions League episode to next week, but I wouldn't rule it out, is all I'm going to say. So I guess that pretty much wraps us up. Any final comments, guys? Anything we've not said about who could maybe nick a spot?
Well, I think we should give our predictions on who we think will get the top four
Yes,
then.
yes. Let's finish with that.
Um,
Go on, you
do you want
start.
me
You
to
start.
I'll start since I mentioned it. So City, Arsenal, we'll go with whatever order. I hope City top, but Reece will disagree. Third, I'm going United. I think they're going to be comfortable. And fourth, I'm struggling, but I'm just, even though I was critical of them saying they're not the same team, I think they just will, and it'll be Liverpool getting fourth. And I think Spurs will be fifth, just missing out.
Yeah, I think if we're listing out top four, I do think City is still going to win it. That's never changed my mind. Arsenal second, United third, and I think Liverpool will get it because I think they're capable of winning them tough fixtures. But of course, if Chelsea go to win the Champions League, it all means nothing, really, doesn't it?
No, they both get it.
They'll both get it. Oh, they never used to do that. So
it's they changed it, but still matters coming top four.
I suppose in some ways, then the pressure's not on for Chelsea to win it in that case. But yeah,
So I'll disagree. I mean, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I'm going to go the top three in the current order. So I think Arsenal, again, can't believe I'm saying it. Arsenal are going to win the league. City will come runners up. I still do think, despite everything I said about United, I still do think they'll get third and they'll turn it around even without Casemiro. But for fourth spot, Reece, I think we agree on that. I am going to go Liverpool. For the reasons I've said, Spurs, Newcastle, losing form. Liverpool, although they lost to Bournemouth, any team capable of beating Man United in that form 7-0 has got it in them. They've done it before. They've done it in recent years. They've got the manager. So I think Liverpool are going to turn it around and end up in there. And then hopefully we'll win the Champions League and it'll be five English teams. Well, there you have it. That wraps us up for another episode. As always, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, let us know your thoughts in the comments. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.